The most dangerous secrets are not the ones people hide from the world. They are the ones they hide from the people they love. The last light of a Manhattan sunset spilled across the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Carter penthouse, turning the glass towers beyond into rivers of molten gold. Olivia Brooks stood quietly beside the grand piano, her fingers resting on its polished black surface, as she watched the city prepare for another glittering evening. From 48 floors above Fifth Avenue, the world looked peaceful, beautiful, untouchable. Yet she had learned long ago that appearances were often the most convincing lies. Behind her, the soft click of Italian leather shoes echoed across the marble floor. She did not need to turn around to know who it was. Ethan Carter had always walked with the confidence of a man who believed he controlled every outcome. Billionaire. Ew. Visionary. The financial magazines called him a king. Tonight he looked like a stranger. The silence stretched between them, heavy and cold. Ethan placed a cream-colored envelope on the dining table. The sound was small, almost insignificant, but it seemed to echo through every corner of the penthouse. Olivia's eyes drifted toward it. She already knew what was inside. Somehow she had known for months. "You're not even going to ask what it is?" Ethan finally said. His voice carried the sharp edge of someone who expected resistance. Olivia slowly turned toward him. The fading sunlight brushed against her dark skin, casting a soft glow around her features. She looked calm. Too calm. "I don't think I need to," she replied. Ethan frowned. He had rehearsed this conversation countless times. He had expected tears, questions, anger, anything. Instead, she stood before him with a quiet dignity that unsettled him more than any argument could have. "It's for the best," he said. "We both know this marriage stopped working a long time ago." Olivia looked at him for several seconds. Not with bitterness. Not with disappointment. Just a sadness so gentle it was almost invisible. "If that's what you believe," she answered softly. Outside, the skyline shimmered beneath the first evening lights. Inside, the room felt strangely still. Ethan loosened his tie. "I've already had my attorneys prepare everything. The settlement is generous. You'll never have to worry about money." A faint smile touched Olivia's lips. The kind of smile that seemed to hold a meaning Ethan could not understand. "Money was never the reason I stayed." The words landed harder than he expected. For a moment something flickered across his face. Doubt. Regret. Then it vanished. He pushed the envelope closer to her. "Sign it." Olivia lowered her gaze to the documents. The pages that would officially end 7 years of marriage. 7 years of shared dinners, quiet mornings, missed conversations, and promises that had slowly faded into silence. Yet her hands never trembled. Her breathing never changed. Instead, she reached for the pen beside the papers and signed her name with effortless grace. Ethan stared. "That's it?" he asked. "That's all." Olivia set the pen down and folded her hands in front of her. "What would you like me to do, Ethan?" she asked gently. "Beg." The question struck deeper than she intended. Ethan looked away first. Beyond the windows, the last rays of sunlight disappeared beneath the horizon. Darkness settled over Manhattan. Olivia glanced toward the city one final time. Somewhere far away, a phone vibrated silently inside her purse. A message she had been waiting years to receive. Her eyes softened. Then she looked back at the man she had once loved enough to sacrifice everything for. "I hope you find what you're looking for," she said. Ethan said nothing. He watched her as though seeing her for the first time, yet somehow understanding her less than ever before. Neither of them noticed the distant line of black vehicles beginning to enter Manhattan from the east. Neither of them knew that before the next sunrise, a secret buried for years would shake Ethan Carter's world more completely than any divorce ever could. The penthouse felt larger after Ethan left. Not emptier, just quieter. Olivia remained standing beside the piano long after the elevator doors had carried him away. The signed papers rested on the table beneath the soft glow of the chandelier. There. Shadows stretching across the marble like the final pages of a story that had been ending for years. She walked slowly through the home she had once believed would hold a lifetime of memories. The grand living room. The library overlooking Central Park. The breakfast nook where she used to leave handwritten notes beside Ethan's coffee. So many small moments remained hidden inside those walls, unnoticed by the man who had become too busy to see them. Her phone vibrated again. This time she answered. "Good evening, Your Highness," a calm male voice said. Olivia closed her eyes briefly. She had not heard those words spoken aloud in years. "Good evening, Marcus," she replied. "Everything is prepared." She looked through the window at the Manhattan skyline glittering beneath the night sky. "I know. The delegation will arrive tomorrow morning. And the council? They are waiting for your decision." A faint smile touched her lips. Waiting. Everyone seemed to be waiting for something from her. Everyone except Ethan. He had stopped asking questions long ago. "I will be there," she said softly before ending the call. Across the city, Ethan sat alone in his corner office overlooking the Hudson River. The building was nearly empty. Most of his executives had gone home hours earlier. Yet he found himself staring at the same financial report for nearly 20 minutes without reading a single line. Something felt wrong. He had achieved exactly what he wanted. The divorce was finalized. The future was clear. So why did the silence feel heavier than before? His eyes drifted toward a framed photograph sitting near the edge of his desk. The picture had been taken 6 years earlier during a charity gala in Boston. Olivia stood beside him in a midnight blue gown, smiling softly as snow fell behind them. He remembered that evening clearly. Several senators had attended. International diplomats had filled the ballroom. At the time, he had been surprised by how naturally Olivia navigated every conversation. She knew protocol. She knew history. She seemed to recognize influential figures he had never introduced her to. When he asked how she knew so much, she simply smiled and changed the subject. Back then he thought it was charming. Now the memory lingered differently. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Suddenly other moments resurfaced. The way Olivia spoke fluent French during a trip to Montreal. The way she effortlessly understood formal customs during a state fundraiser in Washington. The expensive sapphire ring she always wore but never explained. Small details. Strange details. Details he had ignored. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Finally done with that marriage? Good. Some people simply do not belong in our world." Ethan stared at the message. For the first time, instead of agreement, he felt a flicker of irritation. He placed the phone face down. Meanwhile, Olivia entered the master bedroom one final time. The moonlight poured through the windows, silver and quiet. She opened a velvet jewelry box hidden inside a drawer. Nestled within was a delicate crest crafted in gold and sapphire, the symbol of a family whose name carried influence across continents. Her fingers brushed against it gently. For years she had chosen love over legacy. She had chosen simplicity over privilege. She had chosen Ethan over everything else. Tomorrow that choice would no longer exist. Outside, far beyond the city lights, a fleet of black vehicles continued moving toward Manhattan beneath the darkness. And for the first time in many years, Olivia Brooks was preparing to become the woman she was always meant to be. Morning arrived wrapped in silver light and quiet anticipation. The Manhattan skyline stood beneath a pale blue sky as Olivia stepped onto the penthouse balcony for what would be the final time. A cool breeze moved through her dark curls while the city awakened below. Taxis filled the avenues. Coffee shops opened their doors. Millions of people began another ordinary day. For Olivia, nothing about this day was ordinary. Inside, several packed suitcases waited near the entrance. She had chosen to take very little with her. A few books. Family photographs. The piano sheet music Ethan had once gifted her during their second anniversary. The rest could remain. Material things had never defined her life. Her phone rang precisely. At 8 o'clock. "Good morning, Your Highness," Marcus said. "We are 10 minutes away." Olivia glanced toward the horizon. "Thank you. The council members have already arrived. And the press. They know nothing." A faint smile appeared. "Good." She ended the call and looked back into the penthouse one last time. For a moment, memories drifted through the rooms like soft shadows. Laughter. Celebrations. Quiet dinners. Dreams built together. Dreams abandoned. There was sadness in those memories but no bitterness. Some chapters simply reached their final page. Across town, Ethan sat inside the executive boardroom of Carter Holdings. Sunlight reflected off the glass conference table, while executives discussed quarterly projections. Numbers filled the screens. Market forecasts scrolled across presentations. Normally, Ethan would have controlled every detail of the meeting. Today his attention drifted elsewhere. "Mr. Carter?" his chief financial officer asked. Ethan blinked. "Sorry." "Continue." The presentation resumed, but his mind remained occupied by thoughts he could not explain. Images of Olivia surfaced repeatedly. The way she remained calm while signing the divorce papers. The mysterious phone call. The strange certainty in her eyes. Nothing about her reaction had matched what he expected. By mid-morning, the meeting finally ended. Ethan walked toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. His assistant approached holding a tablet. "Your 11 o'clock interview has been confirmed." "Cancel it." "Sir." "Reschedule everything until this afternoon." The assistant looked surprised but nodded. As she walked away, Ethan found himself staring toward Central Park. An uneasy feeling settled in his chest. Not guilt. Not yet. Something closer to confusion. At that exact moment, several black vehicles entered the avenue outside the penthouse building. Their polished surfaces reflected the morning sunlight. Security personnel moved with quiet precision. Neighbors stopped to watch. Doormen exchanged confused glances. No one recognized the insignia displayed on the lead vehicle. Olivia stood inside the lobby as the motorcade arrived. The building manager hurried forward. "Miss Brooks, is everything all right?" She smiled gently. Everything is finally becoming what it was always meant to be. The glass doors opened. A distinguished older gentleman stepped inside wearing a navy suit adorned with a subtle gold pin. Behind him stood several advisors and security officers. Every movement carried a sense of discipline and respect. The gentleman approached Olivia and lowered his head. The entire lobby fell silent. Residents stopped walking. Conversations disappeared. Even the reception staff froze in place. Then the man spoke the words that would soon change everything. "Welcome home, Your Royal Highness." The silence deepened. Shock spread across every face in the lobby. Olivia remained composed, graceful, unshaken. She simply nodded. "Thank you, Ambassador." Outside, cameras had not yet arrived. Reporters knew nothing. Ethan knew nothing. But the first crack had already appeared in the carefully constructed reality he believed he understood. And before the day was over, the truth would begin to emerge one impossible piece at a time. The news traveled faster than anyone anticipated. By early afternoon, whispers had already begun moving through private business circles, diplomatic offices, and charity foundations across New York. Ethan first noticed it when his phone would not stop vibrating. Messages arrived from executives, investors, and acquaintances he had not spoken to in years. Most were vague. Some were confusing. All carried the same unusual tone. Shock. He sat behind his desk as another message appeared. "Have you seen the international news feed yet?" Ethan frowned and opened the link. A photograph filled the screen. His breath caught. Olivia stood at the center of a private reception room, inside one of Manhattan's most prestigious diplomatic residences. She wore a tailored midnight blue suit accented by a sapphire brooch he had never seen before. Around her stood ambassadors, advisors, and influential figures from across the world. Every person in the photograph appeared focused on her, respecting her, listening to her. Ethan stared at the image. None of it made sense. He immediately opened another article. Then another. The details became increasingly impossible to ignore. References to a royal family with deep international influence. Mentions of humanitarian initiatives operating across several continents. Photographs from years earlier showing a younger Olivia standing beside heads of state and cultural leaders. Every article revealed another piece of a life she had never shared with him. A knock interrupted his thoughts. His assistant entered carrying a folder. Her usually composed expression had vanished. "Sir, I think you need to see this." She placed the folder on his desk. Inside were briefing documents compiled by his corporate intelligence team. Ethan turned the pages slowly. The first page displayed a crest crafted in gold and sapphire. The second contained family records. The third detailed charitable organizations valued in the billions. By the fourth page, his hands had become completely still. Olivia Brooks was not simply connected to a royal family. She was one of its primary heirs. The room seemed unusually quiet. Ethan looked back toward the city skyline beyond his windows. Suddenly countless memories returned with painful clarity. The foreign languages she spoke effortlessly. The dignitaries who seemed to recognize her immediately. The grace with which she carried herself in any room, regardless of who was present. None of it had been accidental. He simply never bothered to ask. Across Manhattan, Olivia sat inside a historic library reserved for members of the royal delegation. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, scattering colors across ancient wooden shelves. The ambassador sat opposite her. "The council is pleased," he said. "You have finally come home." Olivia smiled gently. Home is a complicated word. The ambassador nodded knowingly. "And yet you are here." For a moment she looked down at the sapphire crest resting beside her. The symbol represented generations of responsibility, generations of service. For years she had stepped away from that life. Not because she rejected it, because she believed love mattered more. Outside the library, preparations continued. Advisors moved through hallways. Meetings were scheduled. International representatives arrived. A future she once left behind was waiting to welcome her back. Meanwhile, Ethan remained frozen in his office, staring at the final page of the report. Near the bottom sat a single sentence. A sentence that changed everything he thought he knew about his former wife. She voluntarily relinquished her public royal status 7 years ago following her marriage. Ethan read it again. Then again. 7 years. She had given up a throne, a legacy, and a world of influence. Not for power. Not for wealth. For him. And for the first time since signing those divorce papers, a question entered his mind that he could not escape. What else had Olivia sacrificed that he never even noticed? 3 days later, Olivia's return to public life had become impossible to ignore. Major newspapers carried her photograph across their front pages. International networks discussed her charitable foundation, her diplomatic influence, and the royal legacy she had quietly protected for years. Yet what captured public attention most was not her title. It was her character. Article after article described the same thing. Grace, intelligence, compassion. The woman who had spent years avoiding the spotlight was suddenly being celebrated across the world. Olivia sat beside a long conference table inside the royal delegation headquarters overlooking the East River. Advisors presented reports. Ambassadors discussed upcoming initiatives. Representatives from educational and medical organizations joined by video conference from different continents. She listened carefully, occasionally asking questions, occasionally offering suggestions. Every person in the room treated her opinion with respect, not because of her title, because of her leadership. Across Manhattan, Ethan found himself unable to focus on anything else. He had read every report, watched every interview, studied every photograph. Each new discovery revealed another part of Olivia's life he had never truly known. That realization followed him everywhere. During meetings, during dinners, even during the sleepless hours before dawn. One evening, he found himself standing alone in the penthouse library. The room felt different now, smaller somehow. He walked toward a shelf and paused. Between several business books sat a leather-bound journal. Olivia's handwriting filled the first page. Ethan hesitated before reading. The entries were simple. Reflections about charity projects. Notes about people she hoped to help. Thoughts about family. Dreams for the future. Then he reached an entry written nearly 5 years earlier. "I know Ethan is under pressure. I know he carries responsibilities that few people understand. I only hope one day he realizes he does not have to carry them alone." Ethan lowered the journal slowly. The words felt heavier than any accusation ever could. There was no anger on those pages. No resentment. Only support. Quiet support he had failed to recognize. The following morning, Olivia attended a fundraising gala hosted inside one of New York's most prestigious museums. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the grand hall while guests from around the world gathered beneath towering marble columns. When she entered the room wearing an elegant midnight blue gown accented by her sapphire crest, conversations paused. Not because she demanded attention, because she naturally commanded it. Dignity seemed to follow her wherever she went. Cameras flashed. Diplomats greeted her warmly. Philanthropists praised the programs she had created. Throughout the evening, Olivia remained exactly who she had always been. Kind, calm, generous. Meanwhile, Ethan watched the event through a live broadcast in his office. He barely noticed when the screen displayed the amount her foundation had raised that night. Hundreds of millions of dollars dedicated to education, healthcare, and community development. What affected him was something far simpler. The way she smiled. It was different now. Lighter. Freer. As though a burden had finally been lifted from her shoulders. For the first time, Ethan understood a painful truth. Olivia had never needed his wealth. She had never needed his status. She had chosen him because she loved him. And somewhere between board meetings, ambitions, and assumptions, he had mistaken that gift for something ordinary. Outside his office window, Manhattan glittered beneath the evening sky. Inside, Ethan Carter sat alone with a realization that arrived far too late. The woman he once believed did not belong in his world had actually given up an entire kingdom to be part of it. The following week marked the beginning of a chapter Olivia had postponed for nearly a decade. Invitations arrived from international organizations, universities, and humanitarian councils. Leaders requested meetings. Journalists requested interviews. Philanthropic partners sought her guidance. The world was not discovering Olivia Brooks. It was rediscovering the woman she had quietly chosen not to become while building a life with Ethan. One crisp autumn morning, sunlight streamed across the East River as Olivia stood inside the headquarters of her foundation. The building overlooked the water, its glass walls reflecting the bright Manhattan skyline. Around her, teams worked on projects supporting schools, hospitals, and scholarship programs across multiple countries. Maps covered conference room walls. Reports detailed lives changed through education and opportunity. This was not a ceremonial position. It was work she deeply believed in. As she moved through the building, employees greeted her warmly. Some had known her for years. Others were meeting her for the first time. Yet the reaction was always the same. Respect earned through action rather than title. Olivia paused beside a large display showcasing students who had received scholarships through the foundation. Their photographs filled the wall. Smiling faces. Graduation caps. New beginnings. She studied each image quietly. This was the legacy she cared about most. Not crowns. Not headlines. People. Across the city, Ethan sat in a private dining room inside one of Manhattan's oldest social clubs. His mother, Victoria Carter, placed her teacup down with visible frustration. "This entire situation is becoming ridiculous," she said. "Every newspaper talks about her as if she is some kind of hero." Ethan remained silent. "You should have told us years ago." He looked up. "She never hid anything." Victoria frowned. "What does that mean?" Ethan stared through the window, overlooking Central Park. "It means I never asked." The answer lingered between them. For the first time, his mother had no immediate response. Ethan thought back to countless moments now illuminated by hindsight. Olivia never boasted, never demanded recognition, never corrected people when they underestimated her. She simply moved through life with quiet confidence. Everyone assumed it came from humility. Now he realized it came from certainty. She already knew who she was. She never needed validation from anyone else. That evening, Olivia attended a private ceremony honoring leaders in humanitarian service. The ballroom glowed beneath crystal chandeliers. White roses decorated every table. International guests filled the room with conversations conducted in dozens of languages. When Olivia entered, the crowd rose to their feet. The applause was immediate, genuine, lasting. She smiled politely and accepted the recognition with grace, but her attention remained focused on the people whose stories had inspired the projects being celebrated. Later that night, as the event concluded, she stepped onto a quiet terrace overlooking the city. The air carried the scent of autumn leaves and distant rain. For the first time in years, she felt completely at peace. No secrets, no compromises, no divided loyalties, just clarity. Far below, Manhattan sparkled like a sea of stars. Olivia rested her hands lightly against the railing and looked toward the horizon. She had once believed losing Ethan would feel like losing her future. Instead, she had discovered something unexpected. She had found herself again. And while the world celebrated the return of a royal heir, Olivia understood the truth. The greatest transformation was not reclaiming a title. It was remembering her own worth after spending years forgetting it. 2 weeks later, New York prepared for one of the most anticipated philanthropic events of the year. The Grand Metropolitan Ballroom shimmered beneath thousands of crystal lights, its vaulted ceilings glowing with gold and white reflections. World leaders, entrepreneurs, diplomats, and media figures gathered beneath the chandeliers, all waiting for the evening's keynote speaker. Olivia arrived just after sunset. Her midnight blue gown flowed gracefully as she stepped through the entrance, the sapphire crest resting elegantly near her shoulder. Conversations softened. Cameras flashed. Yet she moved through the room with the same quiet confidence she had carried long before anyone knew her title. Across the ballroom, Ethan watched her from a distance. He had received an invitation only days earlier. At first he considered declining. Then curiosity became reflection. Reflection became regret. Now he stood among hundreds of guests, unable to look away. Olivia looked nothing like the woman he remembered from the final months of their marriage. Or perhaps she looked exactly the same, and he was only now seeing her clearly. Throughout the evening, guests approached her with admiration. A university president thanked her for funding scholarships. A medical researcher praised a healthcare initiative that had saved thousands of lives. Young entrepreneurs spoke about mentorship programs she had quietly supported for years. Ethan listened to every conversation. Piece by piece, another truth emerged. Olivia's influence had never depended on a royal title. Her impact came from her character. The realization settled heavily in his chest. Later, as the evening reached its centerpiece, Olivia stepped onto the stage. The ballroom fell silent. White light illuminated her against a backdrop of deep blue banners displaying the foundation's emblem. She looked out across the audience and smiled warmly. "Success is often measured by what we build for ourselves," she began. "But the greatest legacy comes from what we build for others." Her voice carried through the room with calm certainty. She spoke about opportunity, education, service, human dignity. Not once did she mention her personal sacrifices. Not once did she speak about loss. Instead, she focused entirely on hope. By the time she finished, the audience rose to its feet. The applause continued for nearly a full minute. Ethan remained standing among them, his hands moving automatically while his thoughts drifted elsewhere. He remembered every moment he dismissed her insights. Every time he assumed her silence meant weakness. Every occasion he failed to ask who she truly was. After the event ended, guests slowly filtered toward private receptions and networking gatherings. Olivia stepped onto a quiet balcony overlooking the city. The autumn air felt cool against her skin. Manhattan stretched endlessly beneath the night sky, a sea of lights reflecting across the river. She heard footsteps behind her. She already knew who it was. Ethan stopped several feet away. Neither spoke immediately. The silence felt familiar but different now. Finally, Ethan looked toward the skyline and said softly, "I spent years thinking I understood you." Olivia kept her gaze on the horizon. "And now?" He exhaled slowly. "Now I realize I never even tried." For a moment, neither moved. The city glowed below them. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell marked the passing hour. Olivia turned slightly toward him, her expression calm and unreadable. Ethan had finally begun to understand the truth. The question was whether understanding had arrived too late. The city seemed quieter after that conversation on the balcony. Not because the noise had disappeared, but because Ethan could no longer escape the sound of his own thoughts. Days passed, yet Olivia's words remained with him. Simple, measured, honest. She had not accused him. She had not humiliated him. Somehow that made everything harder. One rainy afternoon, Ethan found himself walking through the headquarters of the foundation Olivia had built. He had requested a private tour through official channels, uncertain whether she even knew he was coming. Framed photographs lined the hallways. Children receiving scholarships. Families moving into safe housing. Communities celebrating new schools and clinics. Each image represented lives changed because someone had cared enough to act. Ethan stopped in front of a display dedicated to the foundation's earliest years. There, among old documents and photographs, was a familiar face. Olivia. Younger. Smiling. Standing beside volunteers carrying supplies into a small community center. The date caught his attention. It was from the first year of their marriage. The same year. He had been consumed by acquisitions, board meetings, and expansion plans. While he had been building an empire, Olivia had been building something entirely different. A legacy measured in people rather than profits. She never wanted recognition for any of this. Ethan turned. The voice belonged to Marcus, the ambassador who had first greeted Olivia after the divorce. The older man stood quietly beside him. Then why do it? Ethan asked. Marcus smiled gently. Because service was always part of who she is. They continued walking through the building. Along the way, Ethan learned stories he had never heard before. Olivia had personally funded emergency scholarships without announcing her involvement. She had visited hospitals anonymously. She had mentored students and entrepreneurs while refusing public credit. Again and again, Ethan encountered the same truth. The woman he thought he knew had been extraordinary all along. That evening, he sat alone in the penthouse that no longer felt like home. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The city lights blurred beyond the glass. On the coffee table rested the sapphire crest Olivia had accidentally left behind years earlier and never reclaimed. He remembered asking about it once. She had smiled and said, "It reminds me where I come from." He never asked another question. Now he wished he had asked 1,000. Across the city, Olivia prepared for another international summit. Advisors reviewed schedules. Security teams coordinated arrivals. Yet amid the activity, she found a rare moment of quiet. Standing beside a window overlooking the river, she watched the rain move across the water. Her life had become busy again, but her heart felt lighter than it had in years. There was peace in no longer hiding pieces of herself. There was freedom in being fully seen. Her phone vibrated. A message appeared from Ethan. It was short. No excuses. No grand declarations. Just a single sentence. "I finally understand how much I failed to see." Olivia read the message once before placing the phone aside. She did not reply immediately. Some truths required time. Some regrets arrived only after the lesson was complete. Outside, the rain continued falling across Manhattan, washing the city in silver reflections. And somewhere between loss and understanding, Ethan Carter began facing the greatest mistake of his life. Not losing a royal title, but failing to recognize the remarkable woman who had stood beside him all along.